Well, good morning, and welcome back to another Bible Coffee. It's good to have you back here with us. I'm Travis.
Mm-hmm. Megan and Bianca is right behind us, or right behind you. Bianca's walking up right behind you.
Oh, hey, Bianca.
Bianca,
She
she's
made
in
it
her
to Bible
car.
Coffee.
Yeah.
I'm glad she made it. Well, welcome back. We are going to jump right in. We are in Genesis chapter 18 still, looking at verses 16 through 33. So let's dive in.
I will be reading from the column on the right, the JPS Tanakh translation. The column on the left is the NRSV translation. You are invited to follow along on either side or along with your Bibles at home or just listen as we read. Genesis chapter 18, verse 16. The men set out from there and looked down toward Sodom, Abraham walking with them to see them off. Now the Lord had said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Since Abraham is to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him. For I've singled him out, that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is just and right, in order that the Lord may bring about for Abraham what he has promised him." Then the Lord said, "The outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, their sin is so grave. I will go down to see whether they've acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I'll take note." The men went on from there to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Abraham came forward and said, "Will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that the innocent and the guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly?" And the Lord answered, "If I find within the city of Sodom 50 innocent ones, I'll forgive the whole place for their sake." Abraham spoke up, saying, "Here I venture to speak to my Lord. I, who am but dust and ashes, what if the 50 innocent should lack 5? Will you destroy the whole city for the want of 5? And he answered, "I will not destroy if I find 45 there." But he spoke to him again and said, "What if 40 should be found there?" And he answered, "I will not do it for the sake of the 40. And he said, "Let not my Lord be angry if I go on. What if 30 should be found there?" He answered, "I'll not do it if I find 30 there." And he said, "I venture again to speak to my Lord. What if 20 should be found there?" And he answered, "I will not destroy for the sake of 20. And he said, "Let not my Lord be angry if I speak but this one last time. What if 10 should be found there?" And he answered, "I will not destroy for the sake of the 10. When the Lord had finished speaking to Abraham, he departed, and Abraham returned to his place. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of the Lord lives forever, and this is the word of the Lord. All thanks be to God.
So, destroy or not destroy? That is the question.
Ooh, that's a good question. That sounded quite poetic, actually. Oh man, to destroy or not destroy? That is the question.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
the whole overall kind of question that remains over this part of the scripture.
I think so too. And it's hanging so hard that the Lord was even debating on whether or not to tell Abraham what the Lord was planning to do with Sodom.
Well, yeah, and so let's talk about that because Abraham, he wasn't sure about telling him, but God was like, "It is so bad. Abraham's going to understand." And so then Abraham starts counting down. I think he started at like 50, right? And then he
Uh-huh.
went to 45. And then he started skipping some tens, maybe. And he got down to 10, didn't he?
Yeah,
Did he get
yeah,
down to 10? Yeah. And he was like, if I find 10, okay. And Abraham was like, man, it's that bad. And God knew that Abraham would understand that.
yeah, yeah. I think
That's what
so.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, did God not want to stress him out? Did God just think he'd understand, or what it was? So I can't figure out exactly why, because I don't know, maybe it's that, but Abraham didn't seem to understand. It's because he started fussing as soon as he wrote. And that's another thing that was interesting about the story, is because the Lord said that the Lord was about to go down and check Sodom and all that. But it doesn't say that that God said that within Abraham's hearing distance. So somehow Abraham knew what God was up to, and right away, Abraham started asking the question. So I wonder about that. How did Abraham know what God was up to unless he did hear God saying that?
But he speaks to Abraham all the time. Like God spoke to him a lot. So I mean, this is not like an uncommon thing.
Yeah, but Abraham didn't know about that what God was going to do about Sodom, and God was even debating telling him. And then when God was about to go do it, Abraham knew and started questioning God.
Because God doesn't have to tell Abraham all his plans. It's not like Abraham owns God. That's not how this works.
God
So
didn't
he
have
was
to.
just going to let him in on this.
Now Abraham, he shows a lot of concern about Sodom, and I wonder if he was just generally concerned about Sodom, because his issue just seemed to be about not wiping out the righteous with the evil. Was Abraham so concerned because he knew Lot was down there in Sodom? Lot pitched his tent by Sodom, and so he was an inhabitant of Sodom, basically. So was Abraham so concerned about it, as he argues, just generally for the righteous in the city who shouldn't have to die along with the unrighteous? Or is his underlying concern over Lot right now?
I don't know. That one's a good question, because I would like to say that it's not just because Lot was like an extension of his family. Like he didn't have like a personal connection with him. But there's no like real proof. I mean, that's where Lot wanted to go, and they stayed there. So
Yeah,
they
it's
were
just
people of this place, and did they remain righteous during this time? That's one of the questions that is kind of outstanding from my perspective.
yeah, and it's just kind of
We don't know a
circumstantial
lot
that
about like how
Lot's
they,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, so he happens to be there. The story doesn't talk about him at all. So that's why I wonder, because what the story just talks about is not making righteous people suffer with the unrighteous. Which brings us to the big question about to destroy or to not destroy, as you stated so eloquently for us. And the big wrestling, and here's where Abraham brings his haggling in. Now you know a little something about haggling, don't you?
Oh yes, I was taught very well by my parents. We used to garage sale all the time, so that's just kind of the haggling spirit there. In addition to that, when we went on our trip, we had the opportunity to do some more haggling. In fact, that's encouraged. That's like something that you're like expected to do.
So I never learned
Expected.
this word haggling until a Monty Python movie. How would you describe haggling for anybody out there who might not know what it is?
Bargaining.
Bargaining. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and this is kind of our a big in-depth look at Abraham bargaining and haggling and negotiating, and he puts God to the test on it. It's like, you're not going. This doesn't fit your character. You're the judge of all the earth. You're not going to be just. You can't just wipe out the righteous people with the unrighteous people. And that's the whole argument. It's like, what if there's 50? What if there's 45? What if there's 30? What if there's 20? What if there's 10? If there's just 10, God says, it's just 10, I still won't destroy it.
It's like something was bad in the water there. God knew it. It was like, this place is just not a good place to keep on earth.
Now, is that a pun? Because that's a pretty good one, actually. The Dead Sea, is there is there something bad in the water, and like nothing can live in the Dead Sea?
Nothing can live in the
Yes,
Dead Sea.
there's something bad in the water. It's too much salt.
Maybe that was their problem.
Yeah, and what their problem was is such an interesting thing that well, we'll see in the next chapter
I
what
know,
actually
see?
happens. And what we do know is that we're just coming from this story of Abraham at the Oaks of Mamre, and he welcomed in the three angels, and it was all about this extravagant hospitality. So it's this perfect setup in the storyline that we can expect Sodom to be something the exact opposite of that. And in tradition, there's talk about, is this story really about hospitality or inhospitality? It's which we're going to talk about more next week. There's questions about the sins of Sodom. Is it because of a homosexuality thing, as we see something happen in the next chapter that can lead us thinking that direction? And what does the Bible actually say about it? This story,
Yeah,
it
see, you're
doesn't.
getting ready to get me started on topics.
Well, and that's the thing. Is that's where people go with these stories, but the Bible itself about the Sodom and Gomorrah story, it doesn't really say a whole lot. It gives an example of something that happened, and other than that, it just talks about the depravity or evil or however God described it in this chapter. It's pretty basic. But if you look ahead, you see people like Ezekiel talk about it being because they were like partying all the time. They're like gluttonous and not charitable, not giving to people in need, and that was their problem. Jeremiah talks about it more in terms of adultery. Second Peter talks about it in terms of lawlessness. So, what exactly was the sin going on in Sodom that God was so upset about? Or maybe it was just this big combination of all these things that God was so upset about.
Well, and maybe it's a sin that we just don't need to be, just doesn't need to be known. And that's why it got destroyed.
Mm.
It wasn't
Well,
supposed to be something that was like carried on. But, people have visited and they traveled through. So
mhm.
there's always going to be stories.
I have a hard time thinking that it would have been too graphic for the Bible to tell, because the Bible tells some very graphic details at
Well,
times.
I mean, it's Sodom, right? I mean, it's one of like the first places that we really talk about as far as being one of those bad things happen there. It's like Vegas today.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like Vegas today, and it like this isn't the first time we've heard of Sodom. We had the cities of the Jordan Plain, and Abraham was involved in that war and saving Sodom and Gomorrah and Zoar. I think the other two got destroyed in that war, and then here we're dealing with Sodom, and then Gomorrah gets lumped into this. So we have that whole experience of before to remember. And so Sodom had already been through a very trying and traumatic time. And then where is Sodom exactly? There's been a lot of debate and a lot of thoughts about where Sodom actually is. And 5 or 10 years ago or something, an archaeologist found a place on the other side of the Jordan River, on the Jordanian side, that he thinks is Sodom. And this place actually has a level of like ash and soot, and from
Really?
a huge destruction burned down, like we are expecting to come in the
That's
next chapter.
interesting.
And that happened about 3,700 years ago, which would be 1700 BCE. Don't look at me like that. I think I got the math right. Which would be
I
about
feel like I need to
1700
check your
BCE.
numbers.
And that would have been around the time that Abraham could have actually been there. So that's fascinating that they found this city that they think might actually be Sodom, or the remains of it, and there is actually this layer of it being destroyed around the right time frame. So if not Sodom, at least maybe it could have been one of the other cities nearby that also got destroyed or something. I don't know, just interesting things.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I keep wanting to talk about and read the next chapter, though, to kind of put these pieces together. It's starting to turn
Well,
like into the Bible soap opera
it is, and it's
as
going to
the
get
Bible
more.
turns.
And the Bible's going to keep turning and turning. It's going to get even more soap opera-y. So let's
Buckle up.
so to destroy or not to destroy, does Sodom deserve being destroyed? And so the big question is, if there's even 10 righteous people, then it's not worth being destroyed. But if there's less than that, well, fair enough. So did Sodom really?
Well, who am I to question God's decision? Who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I to question God's decision? I mean, that's kind of like where
Not
I'm
to
at
say-
with it. And then in addition to that, he like also backed it up with like numbers. It's like, okay, if there's 10 people, we're
Mhm.
good.
So because we can think about places that are that have had major hurricanes or been destroyed by earthquakes or volcanoes, and a lot of us like
That's
to
not
come
the
up
same.
with
I can't put that connection together.
Well, a lot of us like to come up with reasoning and saying that it's because they were sinful.
I
You
don't
heard
believe
what
that.
so
I
I
never
think
heard that.
I heard preachers saying that about the New Orleans. They were saying that big time because New
Oh
Orleans
my
was such
goodness.
a liberal place, or it was there was so much homosexuality or this or that. They pinpoint one thing or another and say that because it was so sinful, that's why it got destroyed.
Yeah, I didn't hear it because I don't listen to that. I'm sorry. That's just my personal opinion. I'm happy
But
to share it.
But now with the thing on that is, if you go with that idea, then you have to be going with the idea that whoever happens to be righteous there is going down in the flames because the unrighteous, and God wouldn't save that city on account of those millions, thousands, hundreds of people there who are righteous, however big the place was.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't see that being the same thing.
no,
I'm sorry. I can't.
well, you shouldn't be sorry because I agree with you. I don't think it's right. I just think that the
I'm
idea
not
is
saying
out there.
it's right. I'm saying it. That's a great, they can have their own ideas. That's not my idea of
And
what
the thing
happened.
is, the reason why they have those ideas is because of what we find in the Bible. And so they just come theological, come to reasoning and ideas because of what we see in the Bible. And all of us do that. We just come to different places sometimes. But so, yeah, I just wanted to mention that because that's an interesting point that God said, I will not destroy the place if it has even 10 righteous people. And so even if there's just 10 righteous people, not questioning God, whether God did the right thing or the wrong thing, but in your mind, a city that was so awful that there's nothing to do with it but destroy it, would it be worth saving if there were less than 10 righteous people there?
You're asking me the question?
Yeah. Not saying whether God did right or wrong, just saying what do you think? Would, if you were in charge of this decision and you knew there was nothing to do with this place but destroy it, and you found less than 10 righteous people there, would it still be destroyable?
I think it
Not
would
destroyable.
definitely.
Should you still destroy it? Because those righteous people who did nothing wrong will suffer for something they didn't do.
So, first thing is, I go back to I wouldn't question God's decision on that. Secondly, based upon the number of people that would be righteous or not, less than 10, if there's at least 10 people out of this whole entire place, then he was good. But at that point, it's, do you allow those people to continue? Was there something wrong? Like, I don't feel like I have enough information yet to say that.
Well, we're
I
gonna
feel
have
like
to
there's
look.
more to the story for me
We're
to
gonna have
make
to read
like,
the story next week, aren't
yeah, I can't make an educated decision about this yet.
we? All right.
That's what I have to say.
Fair enough. Oh, I just had a good one. Give me a second. Oh, yeah. However, um, that one thing that you mentioned about not questioning God, which is a very good, faithful practice to be, just accept what God does and move forward with that. However, in this very passage, Abraham questions God big time, and we follow in the way of Abraham. So, is it
Well,
not okay for us to question God?
okay, so let me go ahead and clarify on that. I'm not going to say that I agree with everything. but you have to come to a point of acceptance with what happens.
Well, sure. So what I'm asking about is what you don't agree with. Do you think, in your opinion?
But I didn't say I just agreed with God, or I would agree with God.
No. Well, because let me just say that
I just wouldn't question him. I'd have to learn how to accept it because it's God.
Fair enough. I'll say I don't think it would be right to not save the righteous people who were there, even if there's less than 10, or to save the city on account of them, or to save them or something. But to make them suffer, allow any righteous people to suffer with the unrighteous for what the unrighteous did, would be wrong.
So would you sacrifice yourself as a righteous person being in a population of clearly less than 10, knowing that if that place is not destroyed, that it could maybe potentially taint the rest of the other, by cities and stuff like that, with these individuals getting out and spreading the type of behavior that was going on there? Would you sacrifice yourself as a righteous person to prevent that from occurring? And be that person, if God is wanting this path to be for you, is to...
But nobody's being bettered. Everybody's being destroyed. And then
sometimes you gotta look at the math, Travis.
I'm gonna have to have some more coffee to get my brain working around this topic. Too many numbers.
Really.
Too many numbers.
Wake up.
All right. Well, obviously we haven't come to any real resolutions today. However, the story's not over. So we're going to continue again on Tuesday as we pick up again for another Bible Coffee. Thank you all for joining us here. And we'll be in Genesis chapter 19 next week. And don't forget that we've got a picture for you. I'm showing you this picture right now. This is a rock formation that is well known. It has a lot to do with the places we've talked about. It has a lot to do with the story that we're reading. And that's all I'm going to say. So please guess this picture if you can. What is that tall rock formation in the picture? All right. Well, thank you all for joining us again for another Bible Coffee. And we'll look forward to seeing you on Tuesday morning. Every Tuesday, Thursdays at 9 a.m. right here. Thank you for joining us. God bless you all. Megan, any last words?
Bye, Bianca.
You gonna say bye to everybody
else? Day.
Have a nice day. God bless.
Have a nice day. So what is the title of this?